From the stunning coastline of the Balearic Islands, welcome to Ibiza and stop 2 of the 2025 World Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cup. I'm Will Rollo, and alongside me in commentary is Olympian, trailblazer, and one of the sharpest minds in open water swimming, Alice Deering. Alice, this is Ibiza's World Cup debut, and we got it all today. Record entries, elite fields, and for the first time this weekend, the introduction of the 3 kilometer knockout sprint. Safe to say, the open water world has well and truly landed on this island. And Alice, what are you expecting from today's racing?
Hi, Will. Thank you so much. We're expecting some fast racing. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic weekend. The water's on the little bit of the cold side, so 18.3 degrees. So just tipping over into that non-wetsuit race. So let's expect a fast start, to be honest. These athletes are going to want to keep warm, and it's just going to be such a great weekend of racing. As you said, record number of athletes. We have 159 athletes representing 24 national federations. And we also have the 3K knockout, as you've mentioned. So we have many things to be excited for this weekend.
Spot on. Kicking us off today will be the women's 10 kilometers. And as you said, what a setting for it. The conditions will be testing the 18.3 degrees in the water, meaning, of course, being a non-wetsuit race. The breeze is starting to pick up ever so slightly across the course, and the stacked field is ready to take it on. From Olympic medalists to emerging stars, this race has all the ingredients for something special. As you would have seen there, the start list starting to roll through, and we're only moments away from introducing the women's 10 kilometer athletes. As we get another reading for the wind conditions, or the weather conditions, in fact, 7 kilometers per hour across the water. That is simply sensational. There's going to be a very fast start, as we expect, Alice. But who are your favorites going into today's race?
Yes, we've got a very stacked field, as always
Listen,
with these
any
competitions. With
feeders,
the
if you
oh,
want to watch the start of the race, then feeders, you need to go now before we close.
just some good insight into what's happening at these competitions. As an athlete, things are always going on. There's a lot that you have to get done within 2 hours, and of course, making sure the coaches are on the line ready to watch the start of the race, the feeders, and then they'll go to the feeding pontoon. But back to my favourites for the race, we are missing Moesha Johnson today. So in the women's race, it kind of changed the way I was looking at the race and thinking that we probably are going back to a more standard race where, we can't rely on Moesha to create the chaos at 6 or 7K in. So I'm honestly looking to Genevieve Tadaducci, Anna Marcela Cunha, and Caroline Juiz um, for the lead, to be honest, for to be taking home those medals. But of course, there's still so many fantastic women stacked behind them, and I was wondering where your sights are set, Will.
Well, you've nailed the headliners there, Alice. Of course, Tadaducci, the bronze medalist from last year's Olympics, and Ana Marcela Cunha, the most prolific open water athlete of all time, especially at a World Cup level. So, after the finish that she had in Soma Bay, we're really expecting her to bounce back with full force. Caroline Juiz, another good pick, but the only swimmer named Moesha Johnson, well, the last swimmer to win a World Cup not named Moesha Johnson is also in this field, and that is Leah Boy, coming off a fantastic back end of 2024. She's only just missed out on selection to the German World Championships team, so we know that she'll be swimming with a lot of enthusiasm and, I guess, a point to prove in this race.
Yes, definitely. To see Leah Boy's kind of energy that she brought through to the back end of 2024 after unfortunately not competing at the Olympic Games. I think just showing that there's still all the more to swim for. These World Cups still go on in and out of the Olympic kind of cycle in that sense, where some people probably took a rest immediately after the Olympic Games, but it creates a fantastic ground for swimmers like Leah Boy to get in and show what they can do. She came first in Setchibol, second in the overall rankings and in Neom, and third in Hong Kong as well. So she had a really fantastic back end of the 2024 season. And today, I really hope she can get in and do something special like we've been seeing from her.
Yeah, certainly a lot on the line for Leah and many other athletes out there. 58 athletes taking to the water for the women's 10 kilometers. We've spoken earlier this week just how that would affect a race plan, especially for some of our more junior athletes. Speak to that and I guess the different tactics that we're going to be expecting to play out with such a big field.
Yes, good mention to the junior athletes. Tactics for this race. I really think it's going to be a bit more traditional in terms of what we expect from women's open water swimming, where I'm confident, especially with the sprint lap at the start, it will be fast, but Tadeucci will be up front. She'll be taking it out. But I just don't think we'll get that chaotic moment like we had in Soma Bay when all of a sudden Moesha Johnson had created a gap of 20 meters, which just extrapolated out into like 2 minutes by the end of the race. So especially for the junior swimmers, I'm hopeful this can be a fantastic weekend, that they get stuck in and really soak it all in, especially with this race and then the 3K knockout. You have 13 kilometers of racing, or at least 11.5 kilometers of racing, to really be in with the best and learn how that feels.
Yeah, certainly a big weekend. And, you know, for some athletes, they'll be looking for selection to the World Championships this weekend. For some athletes, those tickets would already have been booked, and we can see one of those on screen now, Ichika Kajimoto of Japan. She has been prolific as well through the start of this year, where she actually just finished second in the women's 5K at the United States of American Open Water National Championships. Japan, one of those countries that's starting to make some waves on the international scene.
Yes, definitely. You know, they've always came to open water with a team and with an effort, but you can really feel the uptick from them at the moment. And you know, we can look to Imafuku also as well on the junior side, and some really, really fantastic swimmers who are, you know, creating these opportunities for themselves, showing the federation that they are worth investing in. It's worth taking us to these World Cups. You know, a lot of this often comes down to funding and the opportunities which are given to athletes. So it's fantastic to see Japan really kind of stepping up to that and giving their athletes those opportunities.
Yeah, it's going to be something that we can unpack during the race, that's for sure. If you are noticing here through the entry list that we do have some of the big names of the race yet to be introduced, that's because, of course, the top 10 athletes will be introduced the last over the start line. I guess speak to the moment these athletes that would be walking out to the starting line now, how they would be feeling. It's a very different race to, say, if you were getting ready for a pool 200-meter freestyle, or even, you know, other sports where you can walk out and know exactly when the start time is going to be. There is a lot of nerves waiting on that pontoon, and the more people that walk out, the more the pontoon starts to tip, and I guess impacting the overall nerves of the athletes.
Yeah, it's so true. These walks feel like the longest and shortest walks that you'll ever do in your life. They just kind of, it's where you really like, I always found it the worst part of the race, to be honest, because it's where all the tension is built up to. And sorry, it's a very frustrating feeling sometimes where you are just having to deal with all of these emotions, taking it all in, trying to live in the moment at the same time, but not getting too wrapped up in yourself, remembering your game plan, remembering your strategy. And then when you do end up on the start pontoon, taking that breath, being in the moment, and just, I was always just so excited for the gun to go off and just have that tension released, and you can finally go. And, you know, you see some of the athletes chatting to each other a little bit, you know, just like kind of sharing the moment together, which is really nice. But there was never anything crazy being said, or never too like jovial, because we're all concentrated on what we have to do.
That is once more a great point. The focus is certainly on, and I guess different athletes have different coping mechanisms. As we see one of our USA athletes in Brooke Travis being introduced. It's great to have USA racing once more in this World Cup. Of course, this being the first time racing in Ibiza for a World Cup. Last time we had an open water race of this level was back in 2013 at the World Championships, and the last time a World Cup was swum here in Spain was in 2007. This event doubles as the Spanish Open Water Nationals, and it's going to mean a lot to these athletes representing their federation in a home World Cup.
Yes, definitely. It's fantastic to see federations tying the two together. You know, why not host a World Cup and then put your national champions on top of it, as national championships on top of it as well? It makes so much sense, and it gives your athletes from your country an opportunity to know what a World Cup feels like and to really get some valuable experience. So it's fantastic to see that the Spanish Federation have taken this up. And we're seeing some of our top athletes come out now. You know, they like to save them for the end. So Jeanette Spivaks just recently qualified for the German team in the 10K for the World Championships. Got Caroline Juice here, fantastic seasoned swimmer, the senior athlete from France in open water. And Leah Boy, the athlete that we were just talking about at the start, she had a fantastic blazing end to 2024. And hopefully she can continue that form in this race today as well. Absolutely. And we've got Giulia Gabrieleschi, one of the staple Italian swimmers, always consistent, always fantastic, and a very, very well-seasoned swimmer. Looking forward to seeing what she can put out today. And Bettina Fabian, one of our experienced athletes, fantastic Hungarian swimmer, and has really came through over the past couple of years, like gaining her experience from a junior into her senior ranks. And finally, we have Genevieve Tadaducci, second in Soma Bay recently, third at the Olympic Games. Really, really great swimmer. And Ana Marcela Cunha, of course, took home the overall World Cup winner last year. The seasoned swimmer of our sport, and it is a fantastic lineup. Will we really have some talent from the young side, some upcoming raw talent, and of course the experience with swimmers like Ana Marcela Cunha, Tadaducci, and Caroline Juice.
Yeah, that's some great insight there, Alice. And I guess with Tadaducci and Cunha walking down to the start line now, one of the underlying messages of today with Moesha not racing is we will most likely have a new series leader at the end of today's race. And I tell you what, it's always hard to pick up exactly how they're feeling when they walk out, but Tadaducci looks ready for the fight.
Yeah, I was seeing her walk through and she has everything set. She's the kind of athlete that you see her walk past her and you'd be like, okay, we're starting fast. It was very confident, assured. I know exactly what I'm doing. And if we know Tadaducci, you know she's going to be leading.
So just moments away from the start of the women's 10 kilometers. This is, of course, the second stop of the 2025 World Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cup. We're here in Spain for the first time since 2007 for a World Cup as we get into the hands of the starters. The athletes are ready, all 60 of them on the start line. You can see just the impact that's having on the starting boy. Into the hands of the starters. Moments away, and in fact we are underway here in Ibiza. 10 kilometers ahead of our athletes, 6 laps, open water, and everything on the line. You'll see a fast start as our athletes start fighting for positions early, especially heading down this long straight to the first turn can. Plenty of eyes will be on the usual suspects, but don't blink. Conditions, pacing, and positioning are going to be everything today. It's tactical, it's physical, with the World Cup points on the table. Expect fireworks from the very start. But Alice, of course, this is a very important part of the race. What are we watching in the first few hundred meters?
Yeah, this is where I think you've always said it so well, Will, that An open water race can't be won from the start, but it can definitely be lost. And we're looking at 58 athletes in the water. It's a lot. And, when you're trying to all get into position, as well as dealing with a sprint start, you have to be very careful about where you pick and who you get behind and kind of what pockets you find yourself in. So as you can see, it's quite spread out at the moment. We will see this start to thin down. At one point here, we've got maybe like 12 athletes wide on the fourth row. Um, it's stressful, it's really difficult, and you'll start to see that thin out very quickly. But if you find yourself in a difficult position, perhaps caught behind a swimmer who can't keep up, or ending up in one of these pockets of space where you're caught in no man's land, it is really challenging. So you kind of have to find your own water and get behind somebody who's going to take you forward. And I'm not sure if this is I think it is Tadaducci,
Yeah.
closest to us on our screen, and she's just decided to take her own line and really try and drive for the front and get forward.
Well, the one thing that is consistent in life, of course, death, taxes, and Tadaducci chasing the money on the money lap. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Ginevra, Tadaducci just, letting the pack do the fighting through this opening lap, knowing that there is a pretty significant cut across the field in order to get around that first turning can, and not interested in any of the malarkey in that leading group, just wanting to swim in our own water. For people at home, Alice, obviously it looks pretty easy to just cut your own water, but it certainly has its downfalls as well.
It is so challenging to swim by yourself like that, and there are, I would honestly say, probably a handful of athletes in both the women's and the men's races who are capable of really being able to do that and actually make an impact with it. Because obviously any swimmer can just pull off alongside and do their own swim. But to make it impactful is the real challenge. And Tadaducci has always been so confident and aggressive with that. Like, she's happy to get up there and do the work, but she is having a challenge with it today, which is fantastic to see. We have a number of Italian swimmers up there, as well as Spain and Japan, and a Monaco hat, which will be Lisa Pau as well. She's always typically at the front of the race, chasing the money on the money lap as well. So fantastic to see her back in doing that.
Yeah, we've seen some great battles between Powell and Tadaducci through those opening sprint laps. In fact, even at the back end of the World Cup Series last year, went all the way down to the final race to see who would be crowned the sprint champion. Ultimately, unfortunately for Powell, it was Tadaducci, just so strong across those races. One of the key changes for the World Cup Series this year, of course, Alice, the introduction of the money lap, and it's a difficult one to speak to without actually having swum in a race where it's swum with the first lap having all the money on it, but it definitely impacts the way that the pack activates through lap one.
Yes, definitely. It honestly just really forces you to make sure you have everything together before you get in the water. From my standpoint, and just to give a historic background of it, I was always quite relaxed on the start. Sometimes I would even let people let the start go and then dive in afterwards, because I had 10K to work with. You have 2 hours of swimming to work with and really be able to get stuck into it. Whereas now, with the introduction of the fact of the money lap and the fact that it's only lap one, means that you really have to be on it. You have to make sure your land warm up is good and robust. I don't know if athletes would have done a sea swim this morning before they got in. I personally wouldn't have, because I wouldn't have wanted to get my body temperature too low, but this would have meant loads of jumping on land, probably some skipping, some really good shoulder warm up. But I'm sure some athletes probably did get in who were quite happy to cope with the cold. I just wasn't one of them. But long story short, it just means you really have to be switched on when you get in. You can't be complacent or take things for granted. And I think we have seen Tadaducci, kind of take that lead and cement it at the moment.
Well, and it's interesting because this is only the second race where we have seen the money lap purely being based off lap number one. And what we saw in Soma Bay, of course, being the stop one of the season this year, was Tadaducci going through that opening lap in an absolutely blistering pace. In fact, it was only 4 swimmers that managed to hold the pace, at least in that lead group, with those swimmers being Tadaducci, Moesha Johnson, Chelsea Gubecka, who were in the top 3 for that race. Oh, sorry, not Chelsea. It was blank. Sorry.
Sorry, was it Karina Lee? Was it? Oh my gosh.
No. It was another Australian in Maddie Goff, of course. I'm so sorry for that mistake. And then Gabrielski as well was up there to round out that top 4. So it was a very stacked leading group, and they actually only went through 9 seconds slower than the men did in that opening lap. So you know that this has had a significant impact into the series so far, especially for the women's race. And what we're seeing here by Tadaducci is she wasn't impacted that much by the opening pace. So clearly it's working for her, and I wonder if, how this plays out for a swimmer like Ana Marcela Cunha, who's had so much experience on a world level, but not racing in the...
Writing and creative changes. We're seeing that with the 3K knockout tomorrow. Going to be absolutely fantastic. First time we're seeing the seniors get in and race that, so it's going to be so exciting. But in terms of a swimmer like Ana Marcela Cunha, who has had so many years of experience and kind of has been along all of these journeys of evolution, it is interesting to see if there is a point of evolution where it might not suit her anymore. I'm not saying we're at that, but it would just be curious to see if that is such a point that we can get to in open water, because she is the most decorated open water swimmer. Multiple Olympic medals, multiple world medals, multiple World Cup medals, really so dominant and seasoned. So I'm just interested to see if it will ever get to a point that it wouldn't be possible for her.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting time, and when we speak to the fact that the speed is really starting to come into the women's race specifically, the likes of Isabel Gose now racing on the world stage and training with one of the best open water programs in the world. Moesha Johnson continuing to drop time in the pool as well. Amongst those are only the headliners, of course. You even look to the Spaniards as hopefuls with Angela Martinez, but even the US swimmers, there is so much speed coming into open water swimming, and it starts to get to a point is how fast is it in the pool, and then how much does your open water tactics really play the overall feature. So it's going to be interesting for fans out there. I'm certainly glad that I'm not in the water competing against it, because as we saw with the men's race, when Florian Walbrock really started to charge through it, it moved on some of those more experienced athletes.
Yes, that's definitely the case. And this is something that I was always kind of hyper aware of when I was doing my time as an athlete. We saw the men's evolution come in probably 2017, 2018, when Florian Walbrock really started punching through and creating that dominant moment for himself, especially at the 2019 World Championships and then, of course, the Olympic Games, where the men's race was suddenly swimming like 10K for time at this point. And I was always like, is this going to happen with the women's race? I really hope it doesn't, because it didn't suit my race plan. And we have, of course, seen that kind of happen now, maybe about 4 or 5 years after, where Moesha Johnson and Sharon Van Rooyendaal have really been able to keep the speed up. And, Sharon, unfortunately, haven't got her in the World Cups this year, but she always had great pool speed. I remember watching her win the 400 free at the 2014, I believe it was in Berlin, 2014 European Championships, and thinking, wow, like, you can do open water and you're doing the pool in such a dominant way. And that has been something that she has kept running through, whether she has been actively doing pool swims or not. She has always had that speed to be able to call upon. And I think the fun thing about open water is you didn't always need to have that speed. But I fear that we are getting to a point now where that speed is going to be crucial. Exactly as you said, as we saw in Soma Bay with Moesha Johnson really creating that gap and taking those swimmers along with her. And then, Isabel Gose, who is an Olympic medalist in the 1500, and she is now going to be competing in Singapore for Germany in this event. So there's it really has just suddenly been boom, and we have some of the best pool swimmers in the women's race now taking this on.
Yeah, it's what it does mean, though. Of course, Alice, it makes it really exciting for these athletes, especially when they get to swim in water like this. It looks absolutely incredible out there today in Ibiza. It's putting on a show as we return to Spain for the first World Cup since 2007. Out in front, of course, it's still Ginevra Taraducci of Italy leading the way. And I guess, Alice, for those watching at home, as we turn can number 2 and make our way back to the feeding pontoon for the first time, for these athletes, especially Taraducci out in front, what's stopping an athlete from, like Taraducci, where she is at the moment, from just swimming away from the field and trying to almost solo attempt this 10K?
Oh, yeah, that's such a good point. Okay, so um, typically it doesn't normally work out for you when you try to do that. The break should normally try to happen definitely in the second half. We're talking maybe 6K or 7K in, and it really takes a strong and consistent effort over a kilometer at least to create a break which is worth putting the effort in for. And the reason I'm saying this is because the fear is if you do all of that work, put in like really hard meters, you'll end up splitting the pack at a certain point. But if you haven't split the pack and left that gap, then when you get tired towards the end because you've burnt all of your energy, if people are still hanging on the back of you, they could easily swim past you and say, "Thanks for the ride. Thanks for getting us so far in front. I'm going to go take the gold now." So whilst there is a lot of effort going into Taraducci at the moment to be in front and to get that sprint lap win, this will not be all of her effort on the line at the moment. She'll be very conserved in a certain way, making sure that she has enough to be able to um, create a gap if she wants, or at the very least, respond to somebody's attempt to create a gap.
Yeah. Well, and further to that point as well, as for those watching at home, it is so incredibly inefficient to lead a race from the front, because not only do you have the emotional baggage of feeling like, oh, where am I sitting in the race? Who's still with me? How big is this lead pack? Am I going fast enough? All of those internal questions. You've got the physical weight of the pack dragging off the back of you, and then to add even more inefficiencies in, you are solely responsible for the direction of the race. So interesting fact though on this, because especially as you get further into the race, you get pushed into a position where you might have to lead the race. There was some studies done at last year's French Open Water Nationals where they tracked some of these athletes, and when we had Marc-Antoine Olivier move to the front of the race, the swimmers actually started swimming a lot more distance than the prescribed 10 kilometers. Ultimately, in the end of the race, they had to race 10.5 kilometers, and what the design of the race for Marc-Antoine was, because he believed he was fitter than everyone, he thought the further they had to swim, the more likelihood he had on winning. So another tactic to keep an eye on when we have our athletes out in front.
You know, that is so interesting. I didn't know that. Wow. So this is a great example as well of knowing how to race in what races. So, for example, Marc Antoine, he is at his national championships. The team is very difficult to make for France. Please don't mistake in that. But at the same time, the quality of the field won't be as high as a World Cup. So he knew he could take those opportunities to force the race into doing his bidding by, swimming longer. And all it takes is 10 meters here, 10 meters there. Whilst an extra half a K sounds like a lot of swimming, it is a lot of swimming, but it doesn't take much for it to rack up to that very quickly. That is so interesting. And yeah, would you would you would you implement a tactic like that, Will? How would what would your race style be?
Well, to be fair, if I had the speed of Marc Antoine for sure, but usually I was the one trying to hold on to his feet as opposed to dictate where we were swimming. But certainly for some of those athletes that have that elite open water endurance, and a swimmer like Marc, they do so much work at training on their fitness. Like you'd be remiss not to push out the distance, because that last 500 meters really does make a big difference. But a bit of a movement here, Alice, out in front of the race. Tadaducci just ever so slightly being challenged for the lead. That looks almost like, it's hard to pick. Bettina Fabian trying to push through to take the money.
Nice, yeah. And I will say, whilst we've been watching this, there are some gaps happening, to be honest. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely further back, it is very spread out, and that's where the chaos is happening. And you don't really see it at the front. The front, it looks, relatively calm. You'll get these kind of individual battles as we're getting here with Tadaducci and Fabian. But at the back behind them, especially when we're talking about 20th to 40th position, it's chaotic. There is a lot happening, and there's probably a bit of panic happening at the moment. We expect these laps to be fast now. You can't really be surprised with the first lap being quick, but it still creates so much chaos for the swimmers who are kind of looking to hang on in that way.
Yeah. And to the point, Alice, we saw in stop 1 in Soma Bay, they ticked through lap 1 in just over 20 minutes. So they are flying here. It should be just under that time, I believe, as we come down the final 100 meters now of lap 1. That is a bit to unpack there. Let's talk to the overall placings, and we can get into the speed in a second. But as you can see out in front, it is Ginevra Tadaducci leading Bettina Fabian, the top two. Fabian just taking the pace off the chase for the first position ever so slightly. Then Tadaducci is going to collect the money lap for the second stop in a row. It's a dominant start to the race again. Once out in front is Tadaducci, Alice.
Yeah, you're so right, and I absolutely loved your point about Death, Taxes, and Tadaducci taking the sprint lap. I adore her consistency. She will always come in and do this, and I think it's just it's her MO. She's found how to race, and it is always fantastic to watch. You really can rely on her to get in and give us a show. And look, this is very strung out. As you're seeing them come around now, you're kind of seeing the bulk of the athletes just come through the intermediate gates, but this is really strung out. And I don't know if Tadaducci fed. She rolled onto her back and was looking around. I think she was just trying to assess the damage that she's done to the pack.
Yeah.
But she has this is where it's,
well,
if she doesn't slow down, it will just keep extrapolating out, and she will wear them down very quickly, and people will end up falling off the back of it.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye out there for Anna Marcella, of course, and she didn't come through in that top 15, but I think she was between the sort of 16 to 24th range there. But Caroline Juis, one of those big names going into the race, going through in 30 seconds. So when you talk to the, I guess, overall positioning of Anna Marcella Cunha and Caroline Juis really being put on the back foot, you can't underestimate, whilst they haven't taken the physical toll of leading through the opening leg, they've definitely taken an emotional toll of thinking, oh my goodness, I've got a lot of work ahead of me now.
Yes. This is the you kind of flip that coin, don't you? If you want to be up front, you have the confidence of being in front, but you also have the physical toll, as you said. But being behind, you really have to make sure you have everything sorted out. You have to be constantly thinking, constantly on it, assessing where you're at. I don't know if that is Anna Marcella Cunha on. I think it might be on the left-hand side of the screen at the bottom. But anyway, sitting further back is stressful. You're constantly thinking, okay, I need to move up at some point. When am I going to make that move? And being very aware that your time is finite and you have to make your moves and be decisive at a certain point. We see that time and time again from Anna Marcella. She is fantastic at making those calls and getting up. So I'm not worried about her yet. If we were looking at lap 5 or 6, different conversation, but because it's lap 2, the pace has came out of it. We're seeing Bettina Fabian taking the lead now with her Hungarian teammate, who I will try to find the name of in a second. But even still, you can see the damage that has been done. Typically, these races in the women's, historically anyway, we wouldn't see such a stringing out of the pack. This is looking very typical for a men's formation, to be honest. I don't know how you feel about it, Will, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it at the moment.
Yeah, you are right there. It's what we would see though in this situation in the men's race is someone like Florian Wellbrock just capitalising on the stress that's been put on the back of the field and trying to pull away in the second lap as well. Whereas what I'm expecting is going to happen is we will see, I think that's Simchuk and Fabian leading for Hungary. I can't imagine they're going to push the pace any harder than they need to. Of course, we know the Hungarians love swimming fast at the front of the race. We've seen that from Rozovsky and Bethlehem in the men's race, but haven't seen it yet in the women's. So it'll be interesting to note, I guess, that pack size, and if we see a couple leaders go to the front and try and narrow out that spearhead. But we can't underestimate just how the stress is on the back of the field when you look up and you can see almost swimmers for 50 meters ahead, because at that point you are not only swimming faster than the swimmers around you, you actually have to swim faster than the leader to move forward in the race, which is not an easy task.
Absolutely. And I can tell you from first-hand experience, when you look up and you think you're working really hard, you think you know where the front is, and you're trying to move forward, and you move forward maybe 3 rows, and you think, okay, I must be in like 10th or 12th position, and then you look up again and see another 5 rows in front of you, which are 4 people wide, and it is really mentally taxing. You really have to steel yourself against being disheartened, because that's when things can get very dangerous for you in terms of becoming complacent and saying, oh, I've got time, and then all of a sudden you're on the final lap and time is out by the final lap, because the front would have gone by that point, and anybody that you can pick up is obviously an achievement, but at that point you're maybe racing for 15th place or something like that. So we have, thankfully for a lot of the swimmers, seen it slow down, which has allowed it to bunch up, and then that's when you will get Caroline Driessen and Marcel Cunha moving up through it and kind of skipping into different positions, and hopefully by lap 3 at least ending up in like 10th position, and just giving themselves the best opportunity to make sure if there is a break towards the second half of the race that they can catch it.
Yeah, so all that to look forward to. This is lap 2 of 6. This is the women's 10 kilometers at the second stop in 5 Water Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cup Series. Out in front, it is Bettina Fabian of Hungary, swimming strongly ahead of her country compatriot in, I believe that's actually not Simchuk, sorry, it's Milhavari of Hungary. So a good little battle at the front of the race. But Alice, today also doubles as the Spanish Open Water Championships for 2025. It's an incredible opportunity to race a World Cup, an international race at your home federation. And Spain certainly represented strongly today, with some of the athletes in the water, like Martinez, who we saw in the intros, but as well out there is the bronze medalist from last year's World Championships over the 10-kilometer distance. It would mean a lot to these athletes to step on that dais at the end of today's race, particularly in that first spot.
Yes, you're so right. As we were saying at the start, it is great that a World Cup and a national championships have kind of been merged. Spain taking the opportunity to host a fantastic race in such a great location, and then saying, why don't we just put our national championships into it as well, makes so much sense. And it gives us, I think, kind of like a sample of the future, if I may be so bold, in just the opportunities that federations can take on for themselves if they look to host these World Cups. And, we have so many fantastic locations that we get to travel around to and spectate and, speak about, and the athletes embracing everything that comes with it. I think it just makes sense. And you're right about getting a medal in your home country. It's such a special moment, such a special achievement. And, we typically see it a lot from the Italians, where we've been fortunate enough to, go for a Ranchi, where they come out in force and, get their athletes on those podiums. But it'd be fantastic to see that from Spain today as well.
Yeah, we can see the depth coming in the women's side, particularly. There is still some gaps on the men's, but not too far away. And we've seen that really start to show on the world level through some strong relay performances. The one thing, though, that we yet to see with the Spanish open water swimmers is that consistency on an open water international stage. It's not as easy as it says, though. To consistently be pushing at the front of the race, you need to be not only fast, but very experienced in some testing conditions.
Absolutely, and this is the thing. This is why we are highlighting swimmers, like Marisha Johnson, Tadaducci, and Ana Marcel Cunha, because it you, winning a World Cup is incredible, right? It's a really, really great achievement, but to do it consistently is so challenging because every venue is different. Every venue is different on a given day from its previous day, if that makes sense. And there are so many different elements for you to deal with, as well as the fact it is pure racing. You're not in your own individual lane or your own individual space. You have to contend with the other people around you, their swimming strokes, their tactics, and if they want to get physical with you or not. It's of course against the rules to get physical, but some athletes still do try it, and that's why you can just hear the whistle, making sure, like, trying to encourage people to separate and give each other fair space. So to win consecutively, consistently, is so impressive, because you really have to turn up every time and deal with whatever conditions are thrown at you.
Yeah, versatility is probably the hardest skill to pick up in open water swimming, as we're seeing another lead change. I think that is now Bettina Fabian taking the lead. So apologies for the mistake a little bit earlier. I guess one of the key points that we picked up from lap 1 to 2 here, Alice, was, I guess, how far spread out the lead group was. One of the key notes of that difference is what we can hear from the officials. There was no whistle blowing in lap 1, and that's because there was much more space, almost for survival for these athletes.
Yes, that's such a good point. And I think this is just like the pros and cons of different types of racing, right? So, first lap, everyone would have found they had a lot of space, but they also had to, like, go for it. You can't be reserving your energy at that point. You really need to be switched on and ready to swim. Whereas in the second lap, there is a gap between, I'd say maybe 35th, maybe there's probably about 35 people in that front pack, and then after that there'll be about 20 other athletes. But in the larger pack now that you can see just to the back of the screen, it's going to be busy. There's going to be a lot of accidental elbows, people just trying to find their stroke. It has, like, the pace has slowed down, especially after the end of the sprint lap, and Tadaducci's kind of happy to just sit back and let the Hungarian swimmers take that forward for her. So yeah, it's where, if applying my tactics to it, I would have been thankful it slowed down, but then you're kind of like, okay, now I'm a bit in the washing machine a bit. But it gives those athletes who like to sit further back those opportunities to start moving forward.
So from Tadaducci's point of view here, we saw a lightning opening lap from the Italian, where she had Ana Marcela Cunha on the back seat. I guess if you were Tadaducci from this point in the race, what are you looking for? You don't want the pace to come out too much that it almost gives those athletes that were sitting further back, like Cunha and Juiz, the chance to recover and swim themselves into a race. We saw in Soma Bay that Tadaducci was stuck to Marisha Johnson, the eventual winner, like Velcro. When Johnson went at about that 6K mark, it was only Tadaducci and Gubecka that could keep up. Do you reckon without Johnson being racing today that we could see Tadaducci do the majority of the work? And if so, when are you expecting to see a move?
I was thinking this. I wasn't sure if she would really want to get up front and do all of the work for the whole race. I think she might try and do what Marisha did in Soma Bay. I would love to see her try that and test out, can I do this by myself? Can I, like, she clearly has the speed to keep up with Marisha Johnson, but obviously when you factor in draft and the fact that I think Tadaducci's just like a racer. She really loves to get in and race people out and make this happen for herself. So I'm just curious. I'd love to see her try and take it out at about halfway around the fourth lap and just say, okay, the rest of the lap, good luck, everybody. I'm going for it. See if you can keep up. Basically the same as what Marisha did. So if I was her in this position, I would probably try to do that. I would stick in with it now, bide my time, and start to look to move forward by the end of the third lap, and then be in the lead. And then when she's ready on the fourth lap, just switch on that gas and go.
There you go. That's the insight. We'll be watching that play out. Out in front, though, it is Bettina Fabian and Victoria Milivari of Hungary going stroke for stroke. This is the first time we've seen Milivari race on an international stage. She's relatively quick in the pool, racing at 8:30, 800 meter freestyle, last year's Hungarian national champ. So clearly been doing some work in the training pool and ready for the fight here today.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see more people taking on open water and, following that pipeline from being a very fast and accomplished pool swimmer into let's give the 10K a go, let's see where this goes, and not being afraid to get in front and put her speed on the line and see where that can take her. So really, I always love seeing people put in that effort at the front like that. I could never do it myself. I've always got so much respect for it because mentally, physically, it's so challenging. And I think we're seeing Tadaducci maybe get a little bit bored of the slower pace and say, okay, there's actually too many people behind me. I'd be really interested to know if she did look behind and see the rest of the pack and then decide to just go forward again and continue her dominance.
Yeah, it's an interesting point of view, and you can see the two separate packs now swimming down this home straight to complete lap 2. We've spoken about it through the week, Alice, just how difficult coming back to international racing after a bit of a break can be. And this is the first race in a while where we haven't had either a US swimmer or an Australian swimmer out the front leading the pack. So almost you can fall into default mode as to who's going to take charge. Tadaducci really not wanting to leave anything to chance today. The Italians still yet to select their World Championships team, and today counting towards selection. But it's easy to just sit in the pack, but not often easy to find who's going to lead the race when we aren't used to seeing the swimmers leading the race, not being in the race.
Yes, no, it's so true because everyone's kind of looking around at each other like, are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? And I mean, the Hungarian swimmers did really well there at the front. They looked smooth, they looked easy, but they were definitely swimming within a comfort zone for themselves. But I think Tadaducci didn't want that comfort zone to last too long for the rest of the pack, especially just suddenly looking behind and realizing that everything that she put into lap 1 had kind of gone a little bit, because it really allowed everybody to bunch back up, and you can see the chaos that she's created now by putting in that burst of speed. It's forced a division between the two packs, and it will come like crashing together again as they go around the intermediate buoy in a few moments time. But again, she's created chaos, and I think it's just being that caliber of swimmer and being able to put in such an effort and just dictate the pace of the race is so impressive. And I just want to comment again, this water is like glass. I know it's a little bit, it's cold in there, but what perfect conditions to be able to just take the race and fly.
Oh, so incredible, and not very often that you'll be able to race in conditions like this. Like we saw last year in Hong Kong, almost monsoonal conditions. Well, in fact, it was monsoonal conditions, and where that impacts the race is it's very hard to get away in a group or as an individual from the rest of the pack. What we're seeing here with Tadaducci is almost yo-yoing this lead group where they're getting settled into a pace and then Tadaducci moves forward, stretches it out again. You get sort of gaps. You can't underestimate, again, the impact that's going to have on the swimmers not feeling comfortable at any point.
Yes, it's so true. Making sure that your energy is in the right place, but just like historically being like seeing what she's done, and she's always been the one keeping in touch with the fastest people in the world and proving that she is one of the fastest in the world as well. So I literally had written in my notes Tadaducci to lead. So I'm quite happy I was able to predict this, but then at the same time, she's just so perfectly predictable, and it's just so fun to commentate on it as an athlete in that way because she's happy to get in and do the work. I think again she's really creating a bit of a divide here, and this is where, as an athlete you've probably had a stressful first lap, you've managed to get back on the pace in the second, you think, okay, it's going to calm down a bit now, and then you don't know this, but Teraducci's just suddenly gone, yeah, I'm going to lead again, keep up, and it just, the constant yo-yoing, as you said, this up and down of pace can really be draining for athletes at the back. Some athletes thrive in that kind of, I think it's called fartlek training, where you swim fast, swim slow, swim fast, swim slow, and some people thrive in it, but others it can be very draining mentally and physically to constantly have to shift up and down gears.
Yeah, that's a good point that we'll see play out. And speaking to, I guess, how difficult it is to be a good open water swimmer. You really have to be so resilient, both physically and emotionally. Coming down to end lap 2 here, we'll keep an eye on the top left-hand side of the screen. Tadaducci leads the race. There's no question to that. 2 seconds the gap to Fabian. Pozzebon in third. Cicerelli of Italy in fourth. And 3 Italians in the top 5. In fact, sorry, 4 Italians in the top 5. Kajimoto, the first challenger out of Europe for Japan, in 7th position. But the big names all staying in touch outside of a couple. So we'll see them continue to trickle through here. And Denigan back in 16th, Alice. Usually we see Mariah sitting a bit more forward as the USA swimmer.
Yes, I also had in my notes with America, so Teraducci to lead with the American girls in the front. So I was expecting Mariah Denigan to probably be a bit further up, but you just don't know what's happened. She might have had in that first lap and that first straight just a chaotic moment where you couldn't really find your feet, couldn't get that opportunity. So see her in 16th place, only 9 seconds back at the moment. So not a position I would be worried by if I was her or her coach. There's still always, when going through the feeding station, it does ends up getting a bit messy. Things get ripped up quite quickly, and it's when, if you're not careful, you can get caught out.
So Cunha and Juiz to the back and in the early 30s. A bit of work to do for those two athletes as well. Some big names certainly towards the back, but not panic stations at this point. Am I right?
I wouldn't say so. I'm a little bit concerned now that Taraducci is leading, to be honest. If it was the Hungarian girls in front and they looked like they had very comfortable, very beautiful strokes, it didn't look like they were exerting themselves too much. So I think that was probably a more comfortable pace for them and for the rest of the pack. Now that Taraducci's in front, she's got that high stroke rate. Even when she's swimming like steady, it still has changed the pace of the race. It has picked it up. So it's one of those things where there's a lag. So Teraducci's got in front, she's put the pace forward, but there is a lag from her towards the last swimmer in the pack to understanding what's happened. I actually don't know how long that lag is in terms of time. I would probably predict at least 20 seconds. And then at that point, you have to be like, oh, wait, it's going, and then turn your pace quickly. And as you can see already, she's going for it. I think, yeah, she's creating this divide where we're kind of seeing a repeat of Soma Bay, but much earlier. Am I calling it too soon though? What do you think?
Well, yeah, it's certainly what we don't have with Tadaducci out in front is that absolute raw world class speed that we have with Moesha Johnson. As well with Johnson is just she's so tactical and so fit training in that squad out of Germany that when you see Johnson split from the race, it happens almost instantaneously. Whereas Tadaducci is a bit more of a slow grind and trying to keep that stroke rate really high. She does this by doing a lot of training with the pool buoy, just trying to develop that aerobic fitness, but also that very high cadence and stroke rate. But you are right, like this grinding race is it's all dependent for especially those back markers. They rely on the athlete in front of them to keep contact. So as you can see in the middle of the screen now, there is a split starting to happen in these two groups, and what that's going to enable is for a Cunha or a Juiz, they're going to have to jump a full body length across very quickly in order to stay in touch with our lead athletes.
Yes, and this is where it's very stressful. So you can see the athlete who's in fourth position there in the white hat, knowing this break is happening, but not potentially having the ability or experience in some way to, jump onto the feet of the third swimmer and keep in contact with the medal positions at this point. So this is where if when you're sat further back in the pack, you are trusting and relying on the people in front of you to be to be on it and to make sure that they're not letting first, second, and third get away. We're seeing a potential situation where that could happen, but I just because it's so early on, I'm not sure. But then it's Tadaducci, and she's so good. So I don't know. Yeah, it's really exciting to see how this plays out, and I'm really happy that she's kind of got in and said, let's try this. Let's try. I'm going to call it the Marisa Johnson because it's happened because I feel like she was the first one to do it in the women's race. So I'm going to coin it that for a second. Let's try Marisa Johnson. Let's go for it at the front early, quite early to be honest, and see what I can do to the race and where that ends up. Who can come with me?
Yeah, and from the looks of it, not many people can. This is an electric pace out in front as we see the chase group really trying to work hard to catch up, but it's almost curtains on their race. One of the key things I wanted to point out, Alice, at the end of lap 2 there was the number of Italians, and we almost sound like broken records at this point, talking to how good Italy is at the depth in open water swimming, but in particular, there are some sensational names coming through the ranks to match the likes of Gabrielski, Pozzebon, Tadaducci, just to name a few. But you have Chiara Sanzullo racing today as second in last year's World Championships for the 18-19 years girls 10 kilometers. What is it about Italy that just creates such great stock for open water racing?
Such a great question, and I think it's like a number of things. I think, firstly, because they're so good historically, it allows the federation to be like, okay, let's invest in this. Let's keep this dominance going. It's one of those things. You may defeat one Italian, but trust me, there's another Italian very close behind who could beat you next time. So the depth that they have created has bred a very competitive and exciting scene within itself. I was always very well aware if I was Italian, I probably never would have gone to the Olympic Games because the talent and the competitiveness in their nation is so strong. They also have fantastic open water swimming venues, and I don't know if this is something that some of the best open water swimming nations have. Someone would probably raise me Germany in that sense of they do have some great inland swimming, but don't have many sea swim opportunities unless you want to get into some very cold water in the North Sea. But in Italy, some really, really great open water swimming venues like we see with Golfo Oranci, which we're going to later on in the World Series. But I think just the coaching, the efforts from the athletes of wanting to be good in this event, and the investment that Italy have put into their athletes. You know, they take them to these competitions. Look how many Italians are swimming. Their federation has given them that opportunity, whether it is them paying for it or just saying to the athletes, pay for your entries. You can come as the team and come get this experience. We don't really mind as long as you're at a certain standard. I think sometimes that's half the battle. Getting in and giving your athletes these opportunities is so valuable, and you never know where the next.
Since all the way back in 2018, in the first year that we haven't had an uninterrupted year that doesn't have a championship meet.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. You know, I feel like the Paris Olympics, kind of the line of like, okay, we're back on normal programming now. You know, we of course have a very exciting World Championships. World Championships are an Olympic Games to look to. So these World Cups towards the end of this year, and of course now, but towards the end of this year and into 2026, are going to be so valuable and so important. And I really think we'll just see more and more athletes turn up to them. And as you said, you know, about 5 years ago, the average number of competitors was 40, sometimes 50, if it felt like it was a big competition or a selection meet that a lot of federations had used. But you typically wouldn't get the numbers that we're seeing in the men's and the women's races until you got to a world championships, when you know you're getting up into the 80s, the 70s for the women, the 80s for the men. But we're seeing that at World Cups now. And, you know, this is part of a way of drive from, you know, the Spanish having their open water championships here, but also the fact that a lot of people just want to do this event. You know, the training has came a long way, the competition has came a long way, and you're seeing less swimmers retire as well. You're seeing less swimmers retire at a younger age. So it's keeping the competition high and keeping the entries high as well.
And the one person or the people that really benefit, of course, the spectators around the world, just getting to see more and more high-level racing. And one of the major contributors, as well as the conditions that you've sort of discussed, Alice, is the introduction of the athlete experience. This year we have 4 male and 4 female athletes that will be traveling with every World Cup stop, with the exception of one race through that period. Oh, actually, sorry, we'll pause that. Look at this. There is a definite split here. That's 2.5 body links. This could be a massive move as we come down to end lap 3.
Yes, and I just really want to point out the difference, and I feel bad that we keep mentioning Mauricia Johnson because she's not here. We should really be focusing on the race, but I just want to compare it back to Soma Bay in terms of, you made such a good point earlier of the way Mauricia, when it happens, it's suddenly like a light switch. It's just suddenly gone and there's space. Whereas Tadaducci, and the swimmer that she is, has the capability to create these gaps, but it will be grinding it out of the pack. It will be forcing them to get tired and just not be able to compete with that pace anymore. So I just think it's really cool to be able to like compare and contrast against the two different ways in which you can create gaps in open water swimming. And it's great to see that we've had examples of it in Soma Bay a couple months back, but also now today with Genevieve really doing an incredible effort. And it is danger zone for some of these athletes just coming around this direction, this buoy now. If you're not careful, if you get caught behind the wrong person, or they can't keep up, or you have a dodgy turn, it really can start to be race over very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of speaks to, I guess, why you have many athletes choosing to sit forward in a race now, removing the risk of less experienced athlete dropping from the connecting to the front group and putting you in a really difficult position. At this point in the race, that gap is massive, like 2.5 body lengths, which has come from a grinding change, not a big clash in the pack or around a turn can or from any other sort of inhabiting factors. It is a big gap to have to close down from this point, but it's certainly not over yet. If I'm a betting man, I would say that if anyone in that chase group now, the very clearly defined chase group, wants to be in the chance for medals, they have to close this gap before the end of this lap, which is in about 500 meters time. What do you think of that?
I think that's very correct. It's one of those things where you go around the feeding pontoon and we're only into lap 3. You know, you probably want a drink, and you either choose this is where you choose not to have a drink, to be honest, and you make that opportunity to really try and close that gap. But you have to do the work now. You can't hope it's going to slow down into the into the feeding buoy, or if Tadaducci decides to feed, you need to get in and do the work now. As you said, it is doable, but it requires a swimmer to, as you're saying, to swim faster than Tadaducci. You know, to close the gap, you have to swim faster than the swimmer leading, and I think she's probably the fastest open water swimmer that we have in the field today, and it looks like she's going for it. So all of those things added together, I'm kind of like, oh,
Yeah,
guys,
so
if you want to get back up, you need to make this happen now.
yeah, that's great insight, and I do have a question that I want to ask you about Tadaducci going into this feeding station, but just a very quick update. We've received word that I believe it's Mariah Denigan who has received a red card just off camera. So if that's true, Denigan's race will be over for the day. We'll seek to inform further once we get that information, but not a great way. Oh, there we have it. It is Denigan. Unfortunately, red flag for her, Alice.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some more information into what's happened. We did see her sat, was she in 9th position or 16th? She was
Yeah.
sat in the main pack, so I imagine there was probably a bit of physicality happening there. And referees, we saw it in Soma Bay. It was with a very different situation, but you know, with athletes getting disqualified for going like under the turnbuoys, and we haven't seen any of that this race. And I think it's one of those things, unfortunately, you have to make examples of people of that behavior in a race that isn't acceptable. You know, we need to swim to the rules. So it is really unfortunate to see Mariah's race over, because she's a she's a fantastic swimmer. She's got a strong open water background already. So, you know, hopefully, I think she's in the start list for the 3K knockout. Hopefully we'll see her back in there and, you know, righting some wrongs from today's race.
So there it is once again, red flag for athlete number 32, Mariah Denigan of the USA. With the red flag, we'll look to inform further as we get into the race. But out in front, it is still Ginevra Tadaducci of Italy leading the way. Bettina Fabian just tucked in very comfortably behind. I believe that's Gabrielski, or Posabon, in fact, on the inside of the course, sitting in 3rd position for Italy. Alice, my question now remiss as this lead group joins back into one major pack. But the question, I'll ask it anyway. If you were Tadaducci in this position when the gap existed, when you've gone around the turn can, you would have picked up that there was a little bit of separation. If you had initially planned with your coach to take a feed in that position, would you be going in for the feed, or would you be trying to capitalize on the gap opening up in lap 3?
Oh, this is where it's like, do I back myself that I can still feed and keep the gap? And it's so dependent on how you're feeling in the moment. And typically these decisions are made in like a split decision, like, okay, no, I actually need it, or no, I'm fine, I'll be okay. The only thing is, you don't want to regret your decision later on. So whether you don't take that feed, I think I'd take the feed. I think I would.
Yeah,
Just
honestly,
because,
yeah.
yeah, I think so. I think, you know, if we were talking about lap 4, I'd probably say I can get away with it, because we're only just touching the halfway point. There's still a lot of swimming to go. Those feeds are so important. And, even just refreshing your mouth from the salt water sometimes, it can be as simple as that. But of course, the electrolytes that you get into your body are so valuable. And whilst the water's not hot, there still will be a lot of salt lost from sweat and, a lot of energy burn. So I think I'd take the feed personally. Would you do the same?
Yeah, and almost for a similar reason. I mean, yours is much more logical than mine. Mine would be just the fear of the wrath of the coach if you had agreed to a plan and then moved away from it based on a judgment call that was the wrong judgment this far out in the race at least. Yeah, wouldn't be a good result at the end of the day. But regardless, the pack has closed in together. There is one lead group and one lead swimmer in Ginevra Tadaducci leading a star-studded lineup, and I believe that's Martinez of Spain moving into fourth position as we come through the halfway mark now, Alice.
Yeah, we're flying through this. This is going to be a quick race. We're at 58 minutes for the halfway point. So we're looking at a finish time for these women of 1:55, if not faster, because I do expect the second half to be quicker, especially as the second lap was a little bit slower. Of course, we had a very fast first lap, but I'm just waiting for Tadaducci to turn it on and say, yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
Basically.
How's the big move there, though, with Juiz
Yeah.
and Boy moving into the top 10 through lap number 3?
Nice. Yes. Okay. Yeah. They've really been working well behind. We did see Leah Boy come through. I think in maybe 15th position going into lap 3. So I think the slowing of the pace has really allowed both Swish and Boy to move up and take those opportunities. And we see Ana Marcela Cunha in 17th position at the moment as well. Still in a comfortable position. I wouldn't be worried yet. I think if we're going into lap 5, just because I think Tadaducci's threat is so strong. She's really been playing with the pace of the pack and just testing out, if I put in a burst of speed, who's going to come with me. I think she realized she probably had more people than she would like on her feet, and so thought, let me take the gas out of it a bit, sit back, and then inject that pace a bit later on when there's going to be some more tired bodies.
At what point in this race do you think we start looking towards that sprint finish? Notably, of course, Ana Marcela Cunha 11 seconds back in about 16th position, so well within striking distance and almost arguably in the ideal position for Ana Marcela Cunha. We still have Tadaducci fighting strongly and Bettina Fabian now controlling the lead. But at a certain point in this race, we're going to say, all right, lean back, let's get ready for a sprint finish, potentially.
Yes, definitely. Oh gosh, yeah. I wonder how she's going to choose to play it, and I really do think she is the one dictating the race. So the reason I'm saying how is she going to play it in terms of Tadaducci is she going to leave this down to a sprint finish, which I'm quite confident she could win because just her turnover, her stroke rate, she's just a really fantastic swimmer in that way. Or is she going to use that grind that she also has to just be able to turn on and tire the field out? Yeah, I suppose this is where she's a bit more unknown and unpredictable in that way. Is I just don't know how she's going to choose to play it because we've seen her play around with both so far.
Well, and it's also interesting because Tadaducci's been in such fine form this year. She was second in Solma Bay, but she's third at the Australian Open Water Championships behind Moesha Johnson and Chelsea Gubecka. Really, really been getting to work after the Paris Olympics last year. But we're starting to see, as expected, that there are some forms starting to come into the other athletes competing in today's race. I mean, you'll speak sort of more to it, Alice, but the Olympic hangover certainly can have an impact on training, not only spending some time away from the party, spending time away from the pool, in fact, arguably sometimes in the party, but also spending some time refocusing on your motivation for the sport and and why you actually compete. And one of those athletes who went through their first Olympic cycle last year, leading the race now, is Bettina Fabian. She's back in fine form. Recently raced at the Hungarian Nationals in the pool, where she dropped a 4:11.50 over the 400 free, 8:37.66 in the 800 meters, just outside the medals there, but clearly with some fine form coming in after the Paris Olympics.
Yes, that's such a good point. I'll just talk to the kind of Olympic hangover really briefly. It is so athlete dependent, and um, it's just so, yeah, it's so individual. Personally, for me, I really struggled with it. Was very disappointed with my performance, and then coming back into the next year, I just struggled to see motivation in anything besides an Olympic Games, and that was really where my mind was focused towards, is trying to get to Paris and get to the next Olympics. It didn't work out for me, unfortunately, but every athlete will really have to contend with, what do I want to get out of this sport? And we just see Victoria from Hungary, sorry, taking the lead at the moment. I just want to say she has a really beautiful stroke, like a
Yeah.
lovely high elbow, really long stroke, and I think I think she's decided to take on some effort here too. You know, see some good leg kick from her. Do you think she's putting in a bit of an effort at the moment to
Yeah.
um,
Well,
cause
look
some
at
chaos
this,
as
a
well?
bit of a
Yeah,
gap opening from first to second,
good for her.
and I'm pretty sure that's the lead group there, Victoria out in front. I was doing a little bit of research because obviously with athletes like Victoria, relatively unknown to the open water stage, she was part of the 2018 Junior Open Water World Champs team that took gold in the 4 by 1.25 kilometers. That team was joined by uh, Krzysztof Rozovsky, in fact. So she has a bunch of talent. She's raced well consistently in the pool as well. She actually took home silver in the 1500 meter freestyle at the 2022 European Championships in Rome. So there is a lot of speed there, and you can see it starting to play out here as that gap opens from first to second, and we're only getting a shot of the first two, but you know there's going to be ripple effects down the group as well.
Yeah, definitely. This is what I love about open water swimming. You look at the difference between her stroke and Tadaducci's, and you just see the opportunity that is available to so many different types of athlete. It really is fantastic the fact that you can have a higher stroke rate and probably a shorter entry point, like Tadaducci, and still be dominant, still be great at the sport, or you can have a longer stroke like Victoria, a bit more typical of a men's stroke in that sense, and also typical of a pool racer stroke, and get out in front and lead. And I really, really can't wait to see what she does with this. It is really causing some chaos behind. I bet Tadaducci is singing her praises at the moment in terms of somebody else willing to do the work and create this gap. But um, you can see a small gap opening between Bettina and Victoria. I'm interested to see if Victoria does let off the pace a bit, or if
Yeah.
Bettina can catch that up, or if someone else can come in front. But um, the fit, again, as we saw before, the top five are creating a gap between the rest of the pack.
Well, on that, Alice, outside of maybe Bettina, not many of these athletes would actually know the speed that Victoria would have, and if so, they wouldn't have been expecting it to translate so quickly from the pool to this open water domain, and that certainly plays a part in the race. You've talked on broadcast previously, you know, you get out of a really tough race and you're like, oh, who was leading that race? And it's usually, as you said, the Australians or the Americans, which are athletes that you don't primarily race against as a European due to the geographical barriers of competition. But when you have athletes that come into the sport like we're seeing here with Victoria back with a vengeance, that certainly plays a part on, you know, your more experienced athletes like Anna Marcela Cunha would be looking up being like, oh my goodness, who's taking control of this
Yes.
race and where's it going?
Yes, and I think the fact that it is a name that is new to us as well is what is concerning. You know, as we were talking about Tadaducci this whole time, it's kind of like we expected this from her. I didn't expect this from Victoria. She's only 22 years old, so very young. And this is what I mean by you've got the talent coming through, but you also have the older names who aren't retiring. So it's kind of creating this clash, which makes for some fantastic competition for these athletes. And of course, great spectating from for us because the one thing about open water is it is fairly unpredictable. You can predict certain things. I was confident Tadaducci would be in front. I honestly thought the American girls would be in front. That wasn't a correct prediction from myself, but it's really great to see Victoria getting in and taking this race out, and she's really not letting off of it. It hasn't changed too much in the past, maybe like 3 or 4 minutes. So I don't know if it's going to be a decisive lead happening, but it looks very good and very comfortable from her.
Yeah, and I remember calling a race back in 2023 in Golfo Oranchi where we saw a relatively unknown open water swimmer at that point, Claire Weinstein, just come to the front of the race. And I will be honest, I dismissed the performance going into the halfway point of the race. Weinstein took control and just opened the lead. And I was like, oh, it's great to have youngsters come into the sport, trying to stretch it out. And from that point, no one could catch Claire Weinstein. That was one of the most dominant open water performances I've ever witnessed. So it does show that when you have athletes that can come into the sport, they come in with this natural ambiguity as to how to approach a race, and sometimes it does work out for them.
Absolutely. And, we can take this all the way back. I remember this with Sharon Van Marendal. When she came into the sport quite new, of course, she had a background in 200 meters backstroke at the London 2012 Games. And then she came into open water swimming and she was an unknown. And as we've seen, she's ended up being um, like arguably well, no, categorically one of the best open water swimmers that we've ever seen, with dominance and taking home so many medals. So the point is, this has to start somewhere for an athlete, and I really hope we're seeing this start for Victoria now. um, Even if it isn't, this is great experience of her learning what it feels like to be in front, understanding if is it comfortable, how hard is it, what does it look like, what does it feel like for me. And this is such valuable experience that she'll take into other races. So I think the fun thing about this is it's not like pool swimming where you'll suddenly get someone post a really fast time and then see them post that time at their world championships. For us, it's kind of like we have to see these athletes get in and race the best to understand if they are going to be able to compete with them, if that makes sense. If you go to an open water competition and you win it, but it was full of like regional swimmers or county swimmers, yes, that's a great achievement, but it's not the same as getting into a World Cup and being able to lead it in the way Victoria is.
Yeah, it's a great point. You're only as good as your competition in open water swimming. And whilst there's certainly a lot of swimming left in today's race, this is a significant move by Victoria out in front, really stretching out this lead. And even that shot we had before of our top two athletes, Bettina Fabian, her countrywoman, sitting in second position currently. Whilst it's certainly not a comfortable position for Bettina to be in, when you see comfort in that second spot, they're right on top of the toes. And at this point in the race, Bettina is really having to work hard to stay in contact with Victoria out in front. But Alice, I think the really exciting thing to see here, as an open water swimming fan, and it's something again that I'm getting way ahead of myself for, but we've always wondered who's going to be that second female in the Hungary's 4 by 1500 meter mixed relay. We've had Mira Simchuk that came through the junior ranks really well, racing over in college recently and racing in today's race as well. But Victoria could come to the same level that Bettina has been swimming on. And when you pair that with the likes of David Bethlehem and, of course, the Olympic gold medalist in Christoph Rizovsky, you are looking at a formidable team that will challenge the likes of Italy, France, and potentially even Germany and Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good point. yeah, looking forward to the World Championships where we'll see all of these great races. We'll get the 10, the 5, the relay, and the 3K knockout. All of these great races. And you're so right. Hungary, I remember they were really, in terms of the relay, really competitive a good few years ago. I think it's ebbed away slightly over the past maybe year or so, if I'm being very critical. But you're so right. It's fantastic to see Victoria kind of taking that mantle of, you know, we are a really strong open water swimming nation. We're going to see Rozovsky and Bethlehem in the next race in the men's 10. And I think they'll be looking at this going, yeah, that these girls are doing fantastic as they should be, and I hope they take some confidence from it. They'll get out, have a quick conversation. It's quite a short turnaround in terms of the women getting out and the men diving in, but just feedback some information. And um, I think, with her being such a fast pool swimmer, this is a fantastic race to make herself known in terms of, you've got some cold water. It allows you to kind of not get too drained. You can just kind of swim through it. And then the fact that it's basically like a swimming pool, it's glass, it's very smooth and soft water. So she's really making the most of all of the, I suppose, abilities in her arsenal, essentially, that she's able to really come in and show us who she is.
Yeah, and she's certainly doing that as we come to the end of lap 4 here. About 200 meters to swim before we make our way out for the final 2 laps. That is a lead group of about 20 odd at this point. The pace has ever so slightly come out of Victoria leading the race, as Bettina Fabian's been able to close the gap to the feet. We see the impact on the rest of the field very shortly, but for now, it's been a very impressive lap from this Hungarian duo out in front of the race. I think in third position, we still do have Ginevra Tadaducci, and from the back of the field, we'll see in a second, this is one of our chase groups fighting hard to finish this race. Of course, once you do sort of drop off that lead group, it becomes as much of a mental game as it does physical. And especially for some of these athletes, Alice, they will be competing for not only federation selection to potentially the World Championships, but also competing for support from their federation, should that be financial or otherwise.
Yeah, that's such a good point. When you get into these races, whilst there may not be a international meet selection that your country has used it for, there's still other things riding on it. If they funded for you to go, if they are funding you for your training and your living costs and things like that. So all of the competitions, all of the World Cups that I went to, while some of them were just kind of training and experience opportunities, they still have expectations attached, as they should. We're competing at the highest level, getting to travel the world, having really cool opportunities. Expectations and standards do come with that, and that's why the competition is so fierce. That's why such hard training goes into this, such great effort in racing as well. So it really creates such a great ground for these athletes to come and compete against each other in.
Yeah, that is where we're at this point in the race. These athletes would be absolutely cherishing this opportunity. As you said, Alice, the barriers to entry are significant. To come to this level, you really want to perform when you get here as well. Out in front still is Victoria of Hungary, leading the way as they come down to finish off lap 4. And Alice, we've been swimming for over an hour and a quarter at this point in the race, and for most of the race it's been absolutely guns blazing, and it doesn't look like that pace is going to be drifting anytime soon. So from this point of view, 18.3 degrees once again confirming the water temperature. The air temperature before the race was sitting at 17 degrees. These athletes would certainly be starting to feel the cooler waters, especially you remember back a couple of years, this would have been a wetsuit race. What this means for these athletes, some of the sort of more slender, low body fat athletes would definitely be starting to feel the cool But not only that, it definitely has an impact on your cognitive ability. When you start to get to this point in the race where you are being tested emotionally, physically, and mentally, it can have an impact.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's something that when you dive in, you kind of don't notice it. But if you're in a position where you have an opportunity to think, if that makes sense, where you have an opportunity to think about things other than the race, you can realize it's cold very quickly. And you can suddenly think, oh, this is cold. And then you feel cold. And it's kind of like a spiral that keeps going round. And you have to break that train of thought and just really lock back into the race and to where you're at. Honestly, that is a skill that takes, well, personally, it took me a while to be able to master. I don't know how it was for other athletes. Sometimes my mind would wander and you would get a bit distracted by other things or just random thoughts, and you really had to tune back into the race. So, um, I'm sure I can't be the only one who contends with that. 10K is a very long way to swim. It's a very long way to keep your mind engaged for 100% of the race. So we're just seeing them come through the intermediate gate now. It's going to be interesting to see if Victoria does take a feed here. Um, she has thinned out this pack. You know,
Yeah.
it's starting to trail now, and this is where it's, as I've been saying, this is danger zone for Caroline's recently a boy. I'm not worried about them. She's obviously up there as well, but for Anna Marcel Cunha, she just hasn't came through the intermediate gate yet on our screens. This is where I'm getting a little bit worried in terms of you've got a lot of bodies to get round. The pace is going to be high. It's going to be hot. This might be the tipping point where you lose out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I saw just going through. Oh, there it is, Anna Marcela Cunha in 21st position, 22 seconds off the lead. So she's given up 11 seconds on the race lead through that lap there, which means not only do you have to make up the 22, you've got to swim past the point you were a lap earlier. But interesting to note, Barbara Posabon was sitting well and truly in that top five, has just fallen off as we see another change in lead, I believe. We'll get that confirmation shortly, but that pace still hot as they make their way out onto lap 5. But Alice as well, we saw Juiz, Ana Marcela Cunha and Posabon race just a couple of weeks ago in the Queen of the Sea in Rio de Janeiro, and it was Posabon coming out on top this round through. So clearly those three athletes in relatively good shape to be racing on an international field, but there is a tall task ahead of them to get around the Hungarian duo at the front of the race.
Yeah, definitely. There's still so many fantastic swimmers stuck within that pack. You saw Leah Boy in there as well. Yeah, it's a great point of pointing out the fact that it's a duo. I wonder if they trained. I don't know if they trained together. I'll have to do my research in a second. But is this planned? Was this a planned thing? Did Victoria just suddenly feel, actually, I feel really comfortable. This feels good. As I said, she has a really beautiful stroke, a really fantastic stroke. And you've got Bettina tucked in behind her, or if they swapped. No, still it's Victoria in front still, isn't it? Yeah, Victoria and Bettina tucked in behind her, and I'm wondering if this was planned at all. I will just say historically, Hungary has always had great open water swimmers. He had a swimmer called Eva. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, her name has gone blank, but I definitely know her first name was Eva, and she, I believe, Olympic medalist in 2008. But I'm going to do my research on that in a second. But um, my point is, it's fantastic to see Hungary having this young talent continually come through.
Yeah, you are so right, and I guess whilst it's certainly not the stables that the Italians have had, they've certainly had always had world class athletes, whether that be Rozovsky, who's been sort of the number one name for a couple of years now. He's already got success in place in Bethlehem and the women's side, Bettina Fabian. Before that, as well, Anna Olaz on the women's side was so strong for such a long time, competing in a real strength point for the women's 10-kilometer distance. And you can see the sort of next generation coming through. But when you look at that lead group that came through at the end of lap number 4 there was always the same nations that we've seen towards the front of the race. The one that I did want to pick up is Ichika Kojimoto of Japan, who we talked about it pre-race. Japan aren't necessarily known as a open water swimming powerhouse for at least the last couple of years, but certainly over the last 6 to 12 months, we've seen that depth really start to push through, not only in the open water ranks, but over the longer distance pool swims as well. We'll see that come to fruition once more in the men's race with the likes of Kanto Shimori, the junior world champion over the 3 kilometer knockout, competing in both the men's 10 kilometers and the knockout. But Kojimoto starting to make a name for herself as one of those real star athletes, Alice.
Yes, definitely. This just furthers to our point of speaking about the talent that is constantly coming through, and the opportunity that open water breeds. I just think is so exciting. I think as opposed to pool swimming, I really think it just gives more people a chance, because there are so many different ways of tackling the training, of handling the race, of how you conduct yourself through races. So it's just always so fantastic to see it. And I just want to call back briefly to the point about the Hungarian heritage in terms of open water swimming. The swimmer I was referring to is Eva Ristov, and she was the Olympic champion in 2012. So she has, I was just looking through her times, very fast swimmer, very accomplished, and I think just shows to the pedigree of swimmers that Hungary does create in open water swimming. And I think sometimes I'm definitely guilty of it. It can be overlooked. We get excited by Germany and Italy and France, but Hungary really does have the quality of athlete up there as well.
Absolutely, and that's why they've been so strong, not only at World Cup, World Champs, and of course the Olympic level, but we've seen them really lead the charge in terms of World Cup participation and representing and supporting World Aquatics in this pursuit. As we see, Alice, on the screen there, swimmer number 5 and swimmer number 2, Mafalda Rosa, pulling out of today's race, which is a devastating result for Mafalda Rosa, who is a star of the competition. And of course, up next is her home race in Setúbal, one of the races that she's always been very strong in. And it's not the way that you want to be racing here, but it talks to just how tough you need to be as an open water swimmer.
Yes, that's such a good point. Conditions vary, as I've said, day to day, and sometimes it's just not your day in that way. Sometimes something might go wrong. There might be an injury. I don't know if it might be because of the cold. It's so hard to tell. Each athlete will have that kind of individual story around, what's happened, what's gone wrong, and hopefully, of course, the point is the health of an athlete is always the most important thing. So if withdrawing from a race is going to keep you safe, then that should absolutely be the decision that you make. And that's why there's so many safety boats in the water. And we've been quite fortunate today. We haven't heard too many whistles being blown. I think that's because the race has been so fast. So despite having one red card, it hasn't been too physical from the sounds of it, because you can normally tell by the whistles being blown. So safety and comfort of the athletes is the primary thing. And then after that, of course, the racing and the speed and the fact of competition, it is there as well.
Yeah. And it's sort of been one of the major motivators for World Aquatics over the last couple of years is, almost always safety being the number one priority for our athletes. And that's why these athletes are now swimming in under the 20 degrees over 18 degrees, is a non-wetsuit race, because it was found that under 20 before 18 could lead to some uncomfortable positions for these athletes. So very much safety first, and when you have a big year ahead, which Rosa does have ahead of her, she will be looking to bounce back from this performance relatively quickly and get ready for a home World Cup once again. Setúbal always a staple on the program and continues to deliver in 2025. Alice, as we look back to the race and confirmation there as well, Veronica Santoni unfortunately withdrawing, another big name out late into the race. But if we throw our minds back to Summer Bay, at this point in the race, we had seen Moesha Johnson separate from the field, and was only 3 athletes competing for the medals at that point, with just under, in fact, 30 minutes of swimming now left. When or how do you see these moves coming? Because I think Victoria's been very strong so far, but I don't know if she has what it takes to really blow this pack apart by herself, at least.
Yes, I was just wondering that. We're kind of at a stalemate moment at the moment where Victoria has put in a great effort and has definitely created chaos behind her. She's got, as I've been saying, a beautiful stroke, and I'm just wondering when Tadaducci's going to be like, okay, let's go. And I think this moment might be happening now. She's just coming up on the shoulder of Bettina Fabian, basically overtaking her now, and that slight gap, yeah, she's that.
Yeah, what a great turn.
Right, yes.
That was sensational.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if you're an open water swimming fan or a swimmer watching this, make a marker of the time that just happened at like 1:28:30 in terms of the race, and go back and watch Tadaducci overtaking Bettina Fabian to come into second place. It's honestly like a textbook turn. She found her space and she owned it. She didn't let Bettina like kind of push her out of that, and she got her arms in front of her and said, "This is my space. I'm going round here." Honestly, this is the kind of swimmer that we've been alluding to throughout the race. She is experienced in open water swimming in the tactics needed, but also has the speed and the endurance to cope with really strong paces and injecting that into the race. So, as we're coming down the final straight of the 5th lap, this is where you need to be putting yourself in position. And I honestly, for Victoria, I'd love to see her on the podium. I was always told statistically that the top 10 doesn't change much in the last lap. You'll have 1 or 2 people come into the top 10, and of course 1 or 2 people come out. But if you're at the front, you're most likely going to stay at the front. I think this is fantastic for Victoria and also Bettina, in terms of seeing them get into these positions. But do you think Tadaducci is going to like walk forward now? What do you think is going to happen?
When I did intro that, I was almost about to write Tadaducci off, but I guess that goes to show that in open water you can never do that. But Alice, I think one of the main things is you call back to that 1 hour 28 point of the race. We often talk about tactics in open water swimming, and for like a casual fan, you'll think tactics in open water swimming is knowing when and when not to exert effort, but it really does come to these tactical moments of a race where you can literally jump forward tens of positions with a good turn. And whilst obviously Tadaducci only moved forward 1 position, the effort that she saved by being really clinical around that turn can not only put her into second position, but if she had to do that as a drag race down one of these long straights, it would have completely zapped her energy and opened the door for Bettina Fabian to jump onto her wake as well. So it just shows that practicing these skills needs to be done outside of training, and that's why when we have the Italians racing such a high level all the time, it can be so beneficial for their overall development.
That's so true. And this is the point. A lot of this stuff you cannot do in training. The one thing I learned in terms of open water racing was in training, you get your aerobic fitness and your strength endurance sorted. Tactics, you kind of have to visualize for 90% of the year. And then the other 10% of the year, when you actually get to execute them, you need to make sure you go in and execute them and use every single opportunity that you get in open water racing to do that. So Tadaducci is a very well-seasoned racer, and just that, as you said, clinical execution of getting around that buoy, and but just seeing her I think that's her, isn't it? Starting to pull in front of Victoria, and the rest of the pack has came with them quite well, to be honest.
Yeah.
I do think Ella Marcela Cunha is probably still stuck in there, as is Leah Boy, as is Caroline Ruiz, and Posabon and Gabrieleshi. A lot of names stuck in this pack. So I mean, yeah, this
Yeah.
is what I kind of meant when I said back to traditional open water swimming in terms of the women's race, because we've had like a bit of a change around with the leaders with um, Genevera, Victoria, and Bettina. But as always, it kind of comes down to a point where going into the last lap, I actually don't know whose game this is. Oh,
Yeah,
and,
it's going to start to get a bit spicy here, and
yes,
yeah, you would have seen Ginevra, just jumping across there. What I believe she's going to do is try and pin Victoria on this turn down the far end of lap number 5. Of course, this is Speaking to those tactics, you really get to use the turn cans for your advantage. They are very, very much on the inside of the course. As we pan across, we'll see the sort of guidance buoy in a second, and that will show just how far inside the field they have come on this back straight. But I guess from this point, Alice, like as you mentioned, we won't see too much changing in our top 10, but what we will see is a change in order of that top 10. And the way that this course has been designed, of course, as we mentioned, doubling as the Spanish Open Water National Championships, has been for spectator inclusion. And they'll be racing down this final straight along this incredible coastline in the Balearic Islands, encouraging these fans to get involved and cheer on not only the leading athletes, but potentially some of the Spanish athletes as well. It's going to be a true spectacle through the last 25 minutes of this race.
yes, definitely. I'm just kind of replaying what Tadaducci did in terms of she wanted to be in a different position, so she went and put herself in a different position, and you can just tell she's of course very switched on, wanting to be where she wants to be, and she will go and do that. And I think it's always just so commendable in an athlete when you see them taking it into their own hands, as we always see with her. Oh, unfortunately, we see another withdrawal potentially from an Italian swimmer. Um, but yeah, in terms of the spectatorship and the opportunity that open water has to really grow out its fan base, I think is so exciting. And of course, this just means taking into account the fact that we want to make these races watchable for people on land as well as on digital forms. So yeah, hopefully we'll get some good cheering going down into it, especially as you said for the Spanish athletes, because we do have a number of Spanish athletes still within this top pack who would have an opportunity to get on the podium and, cement and call themselves Spanish national champion.
Yeah, there's a race within a race, as per usual here. This, of course, being the second stop of the 2025 World Aquatics Open Water World Cup Series. 2 athletes lead the race. They have been prolific through the opening stages, and almost, if you could crown a champion at the end of lap 5, it would be out of these 2. But unfortunately, for both Ginevra and Victoria, you can't. You have another lap to race, and we'll be crowning our champion very shortly. As we mentioned pre the start of today's race, Alice, not only are we competing for those line honours, the national title for Spain, but also the series points. Tadaducci, one of the athletes on the Athlete Experience, really wanting to chase those points and take that series lead. She currently sits second to Moesha Johnson after a very strong performance in Egypt. So there's a lot on the line here for these athletes. And if you look back in the pack, you can spot Ana Marcela Cunha just holding on. And, a swimmer like Cunha really needs a strong performance here after a somewhat disappointing finish in Egypt.
Yeah, so I'll just go to Tadaducci. She's currently sat second in the rankings. A win here today would put her in a very strong position, of course, but to take home the win overall, because it would obviously, still so many more races to go. There's at least 2 more World Cups that we have to look forward to, but a first and a second just means that for Marisha, if she wants to come in and try and win the overall cup, she needs to beat Taraducci every time after that race, and then also beat her by a good enough gap to make up for. Do you know what I mean? In case,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
it just puts her in a very strong position, and um, I think she's very capable of it. She looks great right now. I still think she's holding a little something back. It doesn't look like the same Tadaducci we saw on lap one, but I don't know whether that's deliberate or not. So that's kind of maybe potentially the danger point of going a bit earlier and putting in that effort at the start. But she still looks fantastic. She's still in the lead. Victoria's looked incredible here as well. And I think we're coming into a very exciting last lap. And I'm just trying to look down the field to see if I can definitely name any of the swimmers. Unfortunately, I can't. We see a good number of Spanish caps at the front there, which is absolutely fantastic to see. This is really high level racing. So the fact that we already have 4 Spanish caps on the screen at the moment, I don't know if this is also tied to their selection. I know it's their national championships. I imagine selection might be tied to this as well. So we're probably going to see a very exciting fight, like a secondary race essentially for the Spanish team. Oh, and Caroline Suisse in there as well.
Yeah.
It's great to see too.
Well, it's interesting. I'm keen to get your thoughts here, Alice, because when you get to this point in the race, you really start to be able to rule out some athletes in the way that they do race in order to take the titles. And a swimmer like Tadaducci, she does not suit that final burst of speed. When you have such a high stroke rate and a high cadence through your stroke, you aren't able to get it will generate the additional power that some athletes like, say, Martinez here, who we're seeing charge through now, is able to generate by just increasing their stroke rate a little bit as well. And then you amplify that down the field with a swimmer like Ana Marcela Cunha, so experienced in this position, but really coming from a long way back. They see like really significant changes in speed in the back end of a swim, as opposed to the likes of Tadaducci. So we almost need Tadaducci to make a move on this straight, and she looks like she's going to get squashed. Oh no, she does on that turn can. Just goes to show quickly a race can change.
Oh, definitely. And this is where positioning can be so challenging. And, you want to find that space around the turn buoy. But fortunately, so does the other person. And we've seen an incredible jump forward from
Yeah.
the Japanese swimmer, Kajimoto.
Yep.
If it's that, yeah, Kajimoto, thank you. I think she was in about 9th position going through the intermediate gate. So she's had a fantastic jump forward. And this is what we're talking about in terms of the excitement from these other like fantastic swimming nations who are now really pouring time and money into open water swimming. So I'm not going to make a prediction on where this is going to go because we still have 1500 meters of racing left, and this is so fantastically unpredictable at this moment. This could go to Spain, this could go to Hungary, this could go to Italy, it could go to Japan. I still think we're going to see something from Caroline Suisse or Leah Boy popping up through there. And of course, we can't really count out Ana Marcela Cunha. So there are like 6 or 7 different nations that we could see reasonably take the podium at the moment. It's really, really exciting.
Yeah, you are right there, Alice. But the one thing that I would potentially disagree with is, you know, knowing who's in the almost position of strength from this point, because that move, putting Martinez out in the front, what if you can look at her stroke now on this incredible overhead, she does have that loping stroke, which means she's swimming with so much power. She hasn't had any time at the front of the race, and now anyone that wants to take control of this race is going to have to swim around her, which is a really dangerous position, especially where she's positioned currently. She's got Kajimoto, Victoria, and Ginevra all on her feet. Those are 3 high cadence athletes. They're not going to be able to jump the speed that's going to be needed. You're going to have a much stronger swimmer that's going to come around and challenge her. So Martinez really in the box office right now.
Yeah, I would just say it. She has a very, very strong stroke. The power that she's putting through her lats and her scapula to really like surge herself forward with every arm pull is so impressive. And you're so right in terms of the cadence with Genevera and Kajimoto. Perhaps less so from Victoria, but actually I think her stroke has changed since we saw her leading because she's definitely upped her stroke rate. Um, but I don't think they're going to let Martinez get away from them. Like she has created a little bit of, like water for herself, but they are right on her feet. And I just, yeah, I don't know. I like,
Wow. I don't even know
yeah, it's
if
so
she
hard.
wants to get away. I think Martinez
Oh,
is much
okay.
stronger in that sprint finish where she can
I
isolate,
see.
and that's where I think the strength really lies here. Is it's going to be a sprint finish, and it comes down to where you position for that last 500. And it's quite unique, this course, in the fact that it is a 500-meter long straight into that finish line. Usually we see a turn can, only a couple of 100 meters away from the finish line. So it's going to be a full drag race down that final straight. And what a position to be in. Like, what an incredible destination to see the best in the world go head to head, and potentially for our Spanish fans, not only on the stream but on the shore. What a potential moment that lies ahead, as Martinez certainly in control.
Yes, and I just want to say, I think we've been touching on it throughout this race, but the opportunities that have been presented to athletes and the opportunity right now for Martinez to win a national championships, of course in her home country as it's a national championships, but also the fact that it's a World Cup is such a great opportunity that she has seen this, and so have her other competitors. As there's a number of Spanish athletes in that top pack, has seen this and thought, I'm going to run with this and take this opportunity. It will make national news, as it should, and it's just so exciting to see athletes get these opportunities and really make the most of it. So she's bided her time excellently. We didn't really talk about her throughout the race, to be honest. It was quite hard to pick out individual swimmers, especially when they're all wearing the same cap, but she's obviously stuck in there. She's bided her time, and she's chosen her point of execution perfectly. And you're so right, if this does come down to a sprint finish, a stroke like hers, you can just really see her just getting her fingers on the touchpad first.
So we are about 13 minutes away from finishing this race. There hasn't been any significant change towards the lead in terms of our chase group. There is a big charge coming up the inside of the course, but they're going to have to push across, and we'll be watching how that impacts the turn. As you can see, this overhead shot of the field now, probably about 200 meters away from the far end of this course. They'll make that right-hand turn and head towards turn can number 2 before that will be the final turn into the finish line. There is a movement here though now, Alice, as I think someone pulling up alongside Victoria. I think that's Juiz and I can't pick the Spanish cap, sorry.
Yeah, oh, yeah, Sharice, and another Spanish cap, you're absolutely right, yes. And wow, I mean, this is my concern here, is that the athletes kind of battling for second, third, fourth, and fifth are allowing Martinez to just walk away, like kind of stroll away at this point, because they're kind of wrapped up in their own little battle. And we just see a shot here of Lisa Powell of Monaco, but they're kind of wrapped up in their own little battle and not giving each other the space. And potentially, I'd say in this case, Tadaducci's, it looked like she was the one who would be able to bridge that gap between herself and Martinez, not giving Tadaducci that space to be able to get back on it, and then at least give everybody a shot of having an extra medal in the mix that they are arguing for. But they're letting first place go at this moment, and it's fantastic for Martinez, but it's not so good for those other swimmers battling for second to fifth position.
Well, I guess on that as well, Alice, making a move 1,600 meters out, especially when you are very strong over that sprint distance, is difficult, because at this point in the race, Martinez doesn't have an opportunity to really calm herself down. She knows that there's going to be a push from the competitors through that last 500 meters, but who knows when that move is going to come. we look across, I believe that, as you said, is Lisa Powell. Not sure how this relates into the lead of the race overall, but Lisa, a incredible athlete. Oh, this is a gap year, Alice. This is, as you're
She is
talking about, when the
grinding
fight
it.
happens, right?
Yes. Yeah, this is the thing, they're all battling with each other, and I would sometimes get into battles like this, maybe not for first position, but for bridging a gap, bridging any gap. You get into fights like this and you're kind of like, guys, whoever the fastest swimmer is, give them the space. Let them breathe, let them go. It's one of those things, sometimes slowing down is actually the best thing for your race. And I know it sounds very counterproductive when we're talking about the last lap and you're probably thinking, what is she talking about? But if you want to have the first medal position in contention with your race, then you need to let someone go through and maybe go in, just try and bridge yourselves into a single file to really try and bridge that gap, because Martinez has opened up at least a body length, if not a body length and a half, and they are slowing each other down, trying to be the swimmer that gets the swim behind her, if that makes sense. But there will be at least two swimmers in there who will not be the fastest swimmer to be able to do that.
Well,
Oh, it looks like someone's been able to bridge it. Is it Leah?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a great sort of spurt into that final turn, second last turn from, I believe, Leah. And I was going to mention it, but I forgot to, and here we are. Leah Boy, as we mentioned pre-broadcast, was the only athlete not named Moesha Johnson to win a World Cup since the Paris Olympics. So clearly a incredible athlete. And, in these conditions, a couple of years ago, if we had Leonie Beck in this race, we would know at this point who's winning the race. Yes. Leonie Beck, this is a race that's been designed for her. Leah races very similar to the way Leonie does, just having missed that opportunity to show it at the highest level. So this is going to be a great back end to the race. And more importantly, to your point, Alice, is with Leah swimming where she is now, it's opened up that opportunity for that third tier swimmer now to move forward without getting into as much of a fight.
Absolutely, that's such a good point. And it was kind of like on cue. I was kind of like, guys, someone needs to do something. And then you go around the buoy, you see Leah Boy. We're assuming it's Leah Boy. We'll hopefully get some more information shortly. But you see Leah Boy take that opportunity and run with it. And Martinez still looks like she's in a comfortable-ish position in first. But I think Leah is hot on her feet. And if she if Martinez tires or lets off the pace in any way, Leah will definitely find that opportunity and open that door. And you can just see her arms coming into shot now. And you're absolutely right, this is going to be a fantastic sprint finish. And you have two very competitive... Oh, Leah's coming with some force here. This is where the adrenaline of Martinez starts to burn, or turn, I should say, into anxiety. So, you get all of that adrenaline when you're at the front. You haven't felt anybody touch your feet for a good minute or two, as she had, and now all of a sudden you've probably felt Leah touch your feet. You'll be able to feel her splash, and honestly, the level of stress that you feel from that is difficult, but Leah is still moving through with that adrenaline, with that excitement of that I'm catching, as she's been doing throughout this lap. And I think we see Tadaducci off to the right. I think that's her stroke. It's hard to tell with the light.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that I would add to that for Martinez out in front, she's still holding that lope. And when you have swimmers that swim with a loping stroke, they're swimming in relative, feels remiss to say comfortable at this point of a marathon swim, but there is a relative level of comfort knowing that you can continue to hold that lope until you really get pushed, and then they'll turn into an all-out sprint. So I still like the position that Martinez is in. I think she almost found herself in a lucky position, but as you've seen, going around that final turn, there's 500 meters to swim now, Alice. and it is on for all stations. Who is going to take the title? Who is going to be the first Spanish swimmer across the line for the national championships? And at this point, Martinez looks simply sensational.
Yeah, she looks amazing, and I think this is just a fantastic opportunity for Spain, as we've been saying throughout all of it, to really showcase their power and their talent. And you've had a number of Spanish athletes in this race. We have 28 in the men. I think there was about 12 to 15 in the women. So, a massive team that they've been able to take here and support in some way to get here. And, we're seeing a fantastic race here from Martinez. I'm really excited to see how this changes, if this changes. Leah is not letting her go, though. I just don't know if she will be able to get up onto her hip. I'm always concerned, when someone comes up on the hip, that they're basically even at that point, because the drag that is created for the swimmer in front is really something to contend against. So yeah, as you said, we've got about 400 meters left to go now. How this develops, let's see. So exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting way to see how this race plays out. There was 2 Spaniards that were competing in the top 10, or 3, sorry, not one, including Martinez. Otero and Sanchez were up there as well. As we've mentioned, they are vying for a national title and also selection to the World Championships. One note here, Alice, as we get down to the last 300 meters, that I don't think Tadaducci is going to be rewarded for all the hard work that she's put in through the early stages. So that points tally is going to be in the favor of Moesha Johnson. But regardless, this is going to be an old-fashioned shootout down this final stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of very typical of how we saw the race playing out, a changing over of leaders, much more traditional in the sense of, you're going to have your sprint bursts in there at some point, but typically in women's races we saw it come down to a straight out sprint finish, and Martinez is still holding a really strong position here. You can see Leah really doing everything she can to get around her, but I think Martinez has kind of been slipping and sliding, changing her line a little bit and forcing Leah to have to adapt. Which is just fantastic open water racing. So, who is in third place? I wonder. I think it might. I think we've got Caroline Schwyz potentially, and we can see there Italian and German caps. So, as we said, so many different nations still in the mix, and I'm wondering what happened to Kajimoto as well. Hopefully, she's still up there.
Yeah, I think Kajimoto is just on the inside of that course as we got the front-on shot. But here we go now, 200 meters to swim. Out in front, it is Martinez, who has been absolutely dominant through this final stages. We know there's going to be a move here from Boy. When it happens is up for debate, but this, well, as we can see, Alice, that lope stroke is starting to flatten out ever so slightly with every stroke. The kick is really starting to come into it, and Martinez is not leaving it up for chance.
Yeah, absolutely, as she shouldn't. It's one of those things, there is no point conserving anything at this point. Go for it. Change your stroke, ramp up that stroke rate, and let your adrenaline ride you into the finish. You have about a minute and a half left of swimming. It hurts a lot, but you really need to put that to one side, allow the adrenaline to carry you, and the excitement that she'll be feeling in her heart will be something special. Leah Boy is still really
Sorry,
fighting.
Alice, I think it's actually Rita in second for Germany, not Leah Boy.
Oh, sorry. Who was it? Sorry.
Celine Rita.
Celine Rita. Oh, wow. Okay. So sorry about that. We have completely miscalled that. We've got Celine Rita, in second place for Germany, having a fantastic swim. We haven't mentioned her at all. She's obviously kept herself in great contention all the way around. So a really, really exciting swim for her. And again, her adrenaline will be carrying her through to the finish as well.
Yeah, it's going to come down to who can get their hand on the wall first. Martinez certainly in the controlling seat here. Rita trying to get over the top. There is a host of Spaniards really pushing into those minor medals amongst other athletes, but How strong is Martinez out in front, just lifting once again?
Yeah, she looks
So as she
absolutely
comes
fantastic.
down,
She's just found more energy, hasn't she? She's just really striving and going for it. It's fantastic.
fresh off a national title in the 400 and 800 freestyle at the Spanish Pool Championships. It is all Angela Martinez out in front. Can the German challenge? It's going to come down in the finish shoot. As Alice mentioned, Celine is going to need to get onto the hip of Angela at this point. I can't see Martinez really even letting up an opportunity. That incredible lope stroke has found another gear as we talk to the 400, 800 speed. The 837 in the pool is paying all the dividends here. She has been in fantastic form through this final stage of the race. After a really strong 2024, it will be Angela Martinez claiming gold for the first time at a Spanish World Cup. The Spaniard will stand on top of the podium, and Angela Martinez will not be caught from this point, Alice. This is as dominant as it gets. Take this on notice. Angela Martinez is here for business. Rita in second as well for Germany. Alice, that was a star-studded top two. What a battle for the minors. Almost missed who it was on the wall there. Juiz in strongly. Oh, we'll have to wait and see.
Had another Spaniard in third place, I think. I just couldn't quite pick out the hat, but so great, so competitive. I was just trying to read up on Celine briefly, and we see Bettina Fabian taking in third. So a really exciting podium, completely different race, completely different podium, of course, to what we saw in Soma Bay. So again, just showing the depth and competitiveness that we have in open water swimming. And just touching on Celine briefly, I think she's having a really exciting couple of weeks at the moment. She recently swam 8:35 at the Stockholm meets and a 4:12 at the Stockholm meet as well. So it's getting some really good racing in, and definitely someone who is going to be in our sights for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that what a top three, and I guess like it speaks to just how dramatic we didn't really talk about Celine throughout the entirety of it, and she storms through into the medals. Not only that, of course, Martinez didn't really play at the front of the race, and Bettina was thereabouts, but that final finish stretch really where her pool speed comes to fruition.
Yes, definitely, and it's one of those things where you need speed to be an open water swimmer. When I'd often speak to other swimmers who were sprinters, and they would be surprised about how good my 100 PB was, for example, or that I was capable of breaking a minute for 100 free. And I was always like, guys, it's you still have to be able to sprint whilst we're swimming 10K. I'm not swimming 10K for a time trial. We have to be able to sprint. You have to have that change of speed, and we saw that from all of those athletes there, that they were really able to find something and pick something up into the finish.
Yeah, that's the beauty of open water swimming. Another key thing that they've introduced this year is the ability to talk to the athletes directly after the race, so we get the insights straight from our athletes after they've gone through a grueling race. But I tell you what, Alice, Angela looks phenomenal post-race, almost ready to race again. She looks in great shape, and clearly not only the results of today, but the results leading into today speaking for themselves.
Yeah, certainly. And sorry, I just want to take into account this top 10 at the moment. We have Delacroix from France finishing in, I think that was 4th or 5th position, which is a fantastic result for her. We have seen her at numerous World Cups before, but she's really came through with what I would call a breakout swim there. And this podium and this top 10 was honestly completely... This is what I mean about it being unpredictable. It's exactly not. I didn't predict this. I couldn't have foreseen Martinez or Selena Ryder or Bettina Fabian, and we're getting some insight from them now.
In Ibiza, how does that feel?
Hello.
I'm very happy to win this medal, and it's a pleasure to represent my country here in Spain, and I'm very happy for that.
Excellent. Your face says how happy you are. It's a huge, huge smile, wider than Ibiza itself. Leah, no stranger to finishing on the podium places. What are the conditions like out there?
Oh, I was pretty happy that it wasn't wavy. So I'm a pool swimmer more and got into open water like 2 years ago. So the conditions are great. A lot of people and the water was a bit cold, but that's fine.
Excellent stuff. Fabien, it's a brilliant, brilliant venue, isn't it? What a place to do your job.
Exactly. I was hoping that the water temperature will be warm enough, and it became warm enough, so it was perfect for me. I could see the bottom during the race, so it was really beautiful, and I loved being here.
Excellent stuff. Give it up for your race medalists, gold, silver, bronze medals. Look at the smiles on the faces.
Alice, we talked pre-race just how special the opportunity to race at home was for these athletes, for the Spanish athletes racing for the first time at a World Aquatics event since 2013, but for the first time at a World Cup since 2007. And, you know, we were watching the back end of the race. It was good to hear exactly how they felt, but as you said with Celine, it was very tough to pick her as the actual swimmer. And in fact, a quick shout out to Moesha Johnson, who actually gave us that insight. Interesting to note that the best of the best watching along, Alice.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, Risha, for that. It's always so challenging sometimes, especially if we don't know the swimmer's stroke or not sure what cap they dived in with. So yeah, I've also had some swimmers text me some stuff sometimes and just be like, by the way, this is happening, and I'm like, oh, great information. So always so grateful for that. And I just really want to say I love getting to hear from the athletes after the race as well. I always think it's so valuable, so nice, and really gives us an opportunity to see their personality. We often miss that out in swimming, unfortunately, with the nature of it, is that our faces are in the water for the majority of the time. You don't get to communicate, you don't get to smile, you don't get to show people that you are really enjoying this. So seeing them get out smiling and having that brief interview, all of them speaking in a second language, by the way, and doing so eloquently and so beautifully as well, is fantastic to see.
Yeah, I mean, that's an underrated part of open water swimming, or swimming in general, to be fair. A lot of our athletes out there are very smart cookies. I noticed that Angela is currently studying, I believe, mechanical engineering, so clearly doing a lot of work in and out of the pool.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's the thing. With swimming and the professionalization of it, I still think it's so important to have other things that you're able to call your own. And, you know, a degree in mechanical engineering, I mean, you're going to be set for life in terms of getting a job once you're done with your swimming career if you don't want to stay in sports. So good luck to her in terms of like the managing of it. You know, I've done it myself in terms of a university degree and a master's. It is challenging, but it's such a good experience, and I recommend it to anybody.
That's a great insight, and I think often overlooked is just how important it is not to only define yourself by your job, whether that's as a professional athlete or not, and good to see that these professional athletes swimming around this course continue to excel outside of the water. As we see more and more athletes come across, you were correct in predicting that top 10, Alice. In fourth position, it was Delacroix of France, ahead of Jouis in sixth position, Leah Boy splitting the difference in fifth. So big moves for the French team. They are yet to select their open water national representatives at the World Championship. So potentially a move from Delacroix ahead of Jouis could see her either positioning herself for a 10-kilometer opportunity, or even others in the relay 5 kilometers or the 3-kilometer knockout. Very interesting, as we said, with races within races.
Yes, definitely. There's so much to unpack in terms of the results, as always, in terms of, potential selections, future, how things look for the future, and things like that for the athletes. So every place is worth fighting for. And that's why, whilst the medals may have gone, you didn't see the other swimmers just give up and go, oh, well. No, you keep on it, you keep pushing because every result really does count, especially at races of this caliber and this competitiveness with the athletes.
And we talked before the race started about there being multiple opportunities for gold up for grab, but for today, at least in the women's race, both the national title and the overall win going to a Spanish athlete herself. And you could hear the cheers after the race had concluded when there was the interview, of course, with Angela Martinez. I think, Alice, one of the things that we often overlook as professional athletes is just how much these moments not only inspire the current athletes competing, but also the next generation of stars that can come through.
Oh, certainly. You get to see these opportunities, as we've been saying, that you can really take this chance to showcase the talent that is in your country. I don't know how big swimming is in Spain, but this will be one of those stories that Spanish national championships in Spain and a World Cup, Spanish winner. It's just fantastic. What a great opportunity for Martinez to really highlight her sport, highlight her efforts, and get some like get some credibility or no, notoriety. The notoriety makes it sound negative, but some opportunity for the rest of the country to see what a fantastic athlete she is, and then hopefully carry this effort and this interest into the World Championships and beyond. Because I think swimming is often criticised or seen as, an Olympic sport in that sense, but it is constantly happening. There are constantly so many amazing competitions going on, and this is just highlighting the fact that yes, it's an Olympic sport, but it also takes place around and outside of the Olympics in so many different guises.
So, obviously, the second stop of the World Cup series finished now for the women. We move towards the knockout, but almost more importantly, there's serious ramifications for the rest of the season as well. Martinez notches her belt as a winner for 2025. I still think that there is one clear leader in open water swimming for the women's field at least, and that still sits with Moesha Johnson. How do you think when we get to see Martinez racing with Johnson that will play out?
Oh, I think it's very different styles, and I really think, again in my notes I wrote return to normality for a race, because we haven't got Moesha, and I really just think what we saw displayed in Soma Bay, if Moesha is able to rinse and repeat that for the rest of the World Cups and for the World Championships, I think there will be people that will come along with her, but I just don't know who those swimmers will be on any given day. So today it could have easily been Martinez and Moesha up there battling it out, but it's just so hard to predict because of the way that normal women's open water swimming is in its nature, in the sense of it's much more unpredictable. It would typically always come down to a sprint finish. You would often get Sharon or Leonie or Anna Marcella up there, and we're missing two of those names at the moment with Leonie and Sharon. So it has opened up in terms of the normal traditional swimming, this gap for swimmers like Martinez, like Celine Ryder, like Bettina Fabian to come in and take that opportunity. But if we put Moesha Johnson back into the equation, I don't know what that looks like. I think I need to see it play out. Hopefully in Go for Aranchi in a few weeks' time. Or is it Setubal? Sorry, in Setubal in a few weeks' time. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
What do you think though? Like, what's your mind at with it? Because it's
it's interesting because as you sort of mentioned, a return to normality is we get some great shots here, and I'll get back to the question in a second, Alice. But what a destination to be racing in! Just pure postcard sort of stuff here, and it truly delivered as we watched through some of the highlights. But Martinez finished 5th in Sommer Bay, and if we remember back, it was the top 3 that was clearly defined through the last 2.5 laps. Ultimately 2 minutes separation between 1st and 4th place. But 4th was Isabel Gose, and in 5th it was Martinez. So clearly when it comes down to those pack sprints, Martinez has what it takes to race some of the fastest swimmers in the world. And I think that's the way the race played out today, perfectly into Martinez's hands, in fact, because the real last second sprint is where Martinez and Gose and Anna Marcella and even looking back, Leonie Beck really sort of thrive. You can throw so many names into Caroline Zwis, and that's where I return to your point about what we're seeing now is the transition of open water swimming. It's not normal. The race shouldn't necessarily be decided with 2Ks to swim. So it's an interesting point, and I think the battle is going to be who can adapt to the way it's moving to, and then what is the further adaptation of how you win when it's not set in the situation that you would normally like it to be done in.
Such a good point. Yeah, there's so many layers to this, and we've seen it play out with the men's race. The men's race is a bit further in terms of that evolutionary moment. We're at the very start of the women's evolution. So if it does go the way of the men's, it would be interesting to see that we get, we had Florian Rolbrock doing what Mauritia's doing, but then we had Rozovsky and Bethlehem come in and challenge that dominance. So it'd be interesting to see who will be the ones looking to do that in the women's race. But I just want to say briefly as well, we are so blessed with open water swimming because these scenes are incredible, but I feel like we're broken records at every single race where we're like, oh my god, isn't this beautiful? We have really been spoiled consistently, always, for some of the most amazing settings of open water swimming in the world. So really, really nice and exciting. And we've of course got the men's race to come in just in about 45 minutes to half an hour's time.
Yeah, that's the benefit of these 10-kilometer days. You get all the trials and tribulations, the ups and downs that come from a 10-kilometer race, and then you get to do it again for whichever gender comes next. For us now, we move to the men's 10 kilometers in just over 45 minutes time, and the return, of course, of the Olympic champion Krzysztof Rozovsky. What a moment it's going to be for our athletes. As we look through, though, here is the highlights. Geez, Ginevra Terdaducci was incredible today. Just really unlucky with the way that the race played out, and ultimately missing out on that victory.
Yeah, she really put in some incredible efforts, winning the sprint lap. So at least she's coming away with, we'll be coming away with some money anyway, but then also the sprint lap as like the cherry on top for that. But probably some lessons learned. I would expect everybody to be in hard training at the moment as well. So there are a lot of layers to what's happened in this race at the moment. Potentially from Spanish athletes maybe ever so slightly tapered, being a national championships, and I imagine their selection race bolted into that as well. So there's a lot of layers to this that the results unfortunately never really tell the whole story. If you just look at the final results, you don't get to see that Terdaducci was leading the first lap, that Victoria, for example, led for a lap and a half, and she had some really incredible swims within there. So many things to unpack for each athlete.
Yeah, the Hungarians have a lot to smile about from this race, as do a number of federations. So as we move to this final lap, in the white German cap, it was Leah Boy finishing in 5th overall. It was a valiant effort, but Rhoda and Martinez really owned that last lap, and that strong stroke, as you talked about, Alice, the really well engaged lats and all the way through the scapula, coming over the top to get the win. What a moment in a home World Cup. This, in fact, Alice, the 50th World Aquatics event that Spain have hosted. So a big shout out to Spanish Aquatics and everything that they've done as we once more recap our results of the day. Angela Martinez on top at the home World Cup, and I wonder what impact that's going to have for our Spanish men still to come. But here we go, the top 10, Alice. Angela on top.
Yeah, as we were saying, the top 10 doesn't change much, but great to see a variety of nations. It is very European dominated, or completely European dominated. Kajimoto just tiring at the end there, but really putting a great effort. And Ana Marcel Cunha almost making it into the top 10 as well, so she was able to come through very well. And then we see a host of Spanish swimmers.
The women's 10 kilometers, of course, we will be back in action in just under 30 minutes for the men's 10 kilometers. Once more, I am Will Roller, joined today by Alice Deering. It's been our absolute pleasure, and we look forward to calling the rest of the action in the men's 10 kilometers very shortly. But for now, goodbye and thank you.
Those of you still hanging around on the side, our next event, the men's 10-kilometre event, will start at 12 o'clock. We'll be introducing those athletes around about 11:45, so that men's 10-kilometre event will start at 12 o'clock. So make sure you join us for the start of that race.
Recordamos que nos quedan unos 20 minutos para arrancar con la prueba masculina. 10 kilómetros, ¿dónde sino aquí, en la playa de Santa Eulalia del Río? Mientras tanto, la zona de llegada, más atletas españoles. ¡Fuerte aplauso, Ibiza! Llegando aún en la zona de llegada, atletas españoles y de todas las nacionalidades. Aún no se terminó, recordemos, la carrera en esta última vuelta, vuelta número 6. Aún está en curso los 10 kilómetros y en la pantalla grande vemos la clasificación final con los tiempos momentáneos y tiempos definitivos.
We mentioned earlier, some of these swimmers will be the first time
they've competed international, or maybe they're just part of our junior category as well, and you can see some of them just coming in towards the finish now. It's a long race for some of these swimmers, so keep that encouragement going up on the sides. We've got some swimmers still coming in. This should be the final one coming in towards the end right now, so well done to every single one of those swimmers that have completed this 10-kilometer race here on day number 1 of the World Aquatics Open Water World Cup event. There you go. Doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you get there.
Exactamente, arriba para estos competidores que vienen llegando, terminando la carrera, una carrera muy dura y larga, 10 kilómetros, empezaron a las 9 de la mañana y todavía vemos cómo van llegando.
Os recordamos 20 minutos y arrancamos con el procedimiento para la presentación de la categoría masculina 10 kilómetros.